talk about the film now,
Got it.
first of all.
Go to it.
What's the controversy it's generated?
One, so many Americans, black and white, were only told by the media about the Panthers as angry black guys with berets and guns. So when you show a movie that has also their food and breakfast programs, the sickle cell anemia programs, a lot of people don't realize that in '68, when Malcolm had already been shot, JFK had been shot, and Martin Luther King was now shot, one of the few places that had no riots was Oakland, because Oakland was Black Panther Party headquarters, and the Panthers went around and told people rioting, breaking in a window, and taking a TV set's not going to change your political situation. But most people don't know anything about that. So we made a movie that shows the genesis of the party, but I think the other part of the controversy is in the movie, it shows some of how the drugs and guns gets into the ghettos, and that's going to be pretty controversial.
Within the African-American community?
Yes.
Or within the broader community?
Well, broader, but African-American specifically. So that's...
What do you think the legacy of the Panthers was?
Well, the Panthers basically said power to the people. And, when Hoover could sort of type them and say they're just anti-white, and the Panthers came back and said, no, we're not anti-white. We're anti-oppression. You can't fight racism with racism. And the Panthers ran Eldridge Cleaver, I don't know if you remember this, with the Peace and Freedom Party candidate. So you had black and white on the same ticket. So it made it very difficult to call them anti-white because they had a lot of support, Brando, Fonda. I believe Hillary Clinton did some pro bono work, although I'm not sure she'd say that at this point. So I think the legacy was they were the folks that took what Malcolm said, the do-for-self doctrine, and put it into effect, and got out there and said, let's get these corporations that make a lot of money in the hood and have all this excess food, let them donate some food, we'll go to the churches, cook it up, and feed the kids breakfast. And some of the things that were done to them under J. Edgar Hoover were so scary I didn't even put it in the movie.
Things like what?
Well, Huey Newton said about the breakfast program, but he called it survival program. He said, we thought if we showed the people how much we could do with so little, they'd wonder about a government that could do so little with so much. And Elaine Brown said, we thought if we gave people food, they might want clothing. If we gave them clothing, they might want housing. If we gave them housing, they might want land. And if they got land, they might want some abstract thing called freedom. And so when Hoover said, well, basically that the scariest thing about the Panthers is not that they had a couple guns, which was legal before the Mulford Act passed, was this connection with the community, self-empowerment. So one of the plans that the FBI came up with, proposed by a Newark FBI agent, and this is not necessarily the same FBI today, was to inject the fruit that the Panthers were giving out to kids with a laxative that would make you very ill, and give it to the Panthers. And when they would give it to the Panthers, they would write a letter saying that the big white corporations that were donating the fruit were trying to commit genocide on black children. Now, this is all documented stuff. This is in Hoover's memoirs. So a lot of folks don't know the level of things that they were going to. I mean, against Gene Seberg, who was a Panther supporter. And it was just a crazy time.
Books have been written about that in terms of...
very, very intense.
At the same time, there were... I think the impression of most Americans is that they were in favor of violence, were talking violence, were advocating violence, and that created the notion of sort of...
Made him a very easy target.
Easy target.
Definitely. There's a scene in the movie, in fact, where Huey Newton says, nothing really works out of context. So if you go back to the early 60s and you say, gee, this is a time when Governor Wallace was standing in the doors and not letting black students enter schools, when people, white and black, were sitting at lunch counters to try to show solidarity and were getting hosed off the streets or getting bit by dogs. That I think when I look back that clearly to me Martin Luther King was the carrot, Malcolm was the stick, the civil rights movement was the good cop, and the black power movement was probably the tough cop. And what Huey said was that America has a tradition of respecting the gun. You look at any old Western, and he said power concedes nothing without demand. He said, no, they haven't listened when Martin Luther King prayed, and they haven't listened when we begged, but if we get some guns and arm ourselves, and not shoot anybody, but just say we're the Black Panther Party for self-defense, which is why they chose the Panther, was it's a defensive animal, so it only attacks when it's backed into a corner. He's gonna stand up. The people are gonna stand up and listen. And boy, did they ever listen.
Yeah. But
and that's why Huey. Yeah. I mean, they really did. And that was very tough on them, because now once the Mulford Act said it's no longer legal to carry guns in city limits, they started their own newspaper saying that the pen's mightier than the sword. But we remember that image so strongly, that indelible image of them with the guns. That but at the time it was basically saying, hey, enough is enough.